Senator from Delaware.
Are we in a quorum call?
We are not.
Oh, good. Well, Mr. President, I rise today along with my colleague and partner on the Environment and Public Works Committee, Senator Shelley Moore Capito, to celebrate passage of this year's Water Resources Development Act, or WRDA as it's affectionately known. And presiding officer and I have talked about this legislation many times as he's provided input to the bill, along with 97 other United States senators. All 100 senators, all 50 states have provided input to this legislation. As our colleagues may recall, the Water Resources Development Act, we call it WRDA, but WRDA passed the Senate passed the National Defense Authorization Act known as NDAA by a vote of 83 to 11. I'll say that again. The Senate passed the National Defense Authorization Act, known as NDAA, by a vote of 83 to 11. It's not often we pass legislation with that level of bipartisan support. Having said that, the committee, Senator Capito and I do that kind of thing often. And I'm pleased that we did, especially because this defense bill included the Water Resources Development Act of 2022, also known as WRDA. In fact, our WRDA bill became the vehicle through which we advanced the defense bill. That doesn't happen every day, but we're proud of that and delighted that it's worked out this way. But water resources bills authorize, people say, what do they do? What is this bill? What does the WRDA bill do? Well, it authorizes the activities of the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers. I'm a Navy guy, but I have huge respect for the Army. Different uniforms, same team, but especially the folks at the Army Corps of Engineers. WRDA 2022 continues the 2-year cycle for Water Resources Development Acts. And our committee has had a decade, 5 WRDA bills in a row in the last 10 years of completing these reauthorizations on time. This year's WRDA is historic. Not only is WRDA 2022 an ambitious water resources bill, but it's also the product of a steadfast commitment to bipartisanship. And Senator Capito and I have sought inputs, again, as I said earlier, from all 100 senators when we started working on WRDA last year. The final legislation represents an agreement between the 2 chambers of Congress, on our respective Army Corps reauthorization legislation. Before delving into what we accomplished in WRDA 2022, let me just say how proud I am to have co-authored this legislation with Senator Capito, along with Chairman DeFazio and Ranking Member Graves on the House Transportation and Infrastructure Committee. I also want to recognize Senators Cardin and Kramer, as well as Representatives Napolitano and Rausser, the subcommittee chairs and ranking members of the Senate EPW and House Transportation and Infrastructure Committees, respectively. Their leadership was instrumental in helping us develop this legislation. I cannot overstate just how important the Corps' work is to our nation's economic growth, Mr. President. The Corps is a principal steward of our country's water infrastructure. The Corps' responsibilities include improving our ports and waterways to enable trade with other nations, restoring our ecosystems to support fisheries, to support tourism, support recreation, and advancing flood management solutions to make communities more resilient to climate change and to extreme weather. Without these WRDA bills, our nation's economy would suffer, our future would be diminished. WRDA 2022 enables the Corps to continue to operate and maintain America's water highway, a 1,200-mile-long system of inland waterways with 209 locks that are vital to the domestic and international commerce of our nation. Each year, more than 500 million tons of commodities move through this system. Think about that. Over 500 million tons of commodities move through this system, including 60% of our nation's agricultural exports. Operating and maintaining the system results in economic benefit to our country of nearly $14 billion each year. WRDA 2022 also supports safe and reliable and efficient navigation at our coastal ports. And as we have seen over the past 2 years, navigable shipping channels are essential to keeping global supply chains moving. More than 99% of U.S. overseas trade volume moves through the 13,000 miles of coastal channels maintained by the Corps, which together support over 30 million jobs across our country. WRDA 2022 recognizes the economic importance of our nation's commercial ports and shipping channels. As a recovering governor, I often say that it's our responsibility as elected officials to help create a nurturing environment for job creation and job preservation. We don't create the jobs. What we do is help create the nurturing environment that leads to job creation. But maintaining our ports and waterways is a cornerstone of that nurturing environment. Addressing the impacts of climate change is also essential to the task of building our nation's prosperity, economic prosperity for all of us. Climate change is fueling extreme weather which threatens our coastal and inland communities alike. WRDA 2022 makes the most significant boost ever made to the Army Corps' authority to conduct climate resilient work. Climate resilience work is urgently needed. It's not a matter of if the next storm is coming, but it's a matter of when. And with this in mind, the Water Resources Development Act of 2022 recognizes the critical role that the Corps plays in helping communities adapt to climate change. This bill allows the Army Corps to better design and implement projects by accounting for the direct impacts of climate change. It will make a big difference in states like Delaware, like Florida, like Texas, just to name a few, where we continue to see extreme weather like hurricanes and other storms batter our beaches and coastal communities. In addition to overhauling the Corps' project design authorities, WRDA 22 improves the Corps' abilities to make our shoreline, our riverbanks, our stream banks more resilient to extreme weather. In addition to better positioning the Corps to address threats like climate change in WRDA 2022, we also work to rectify historical inequities for tribal and disadvantaged communities. The legislation establishes a new advisory committee to help the Corps more effectively deliver projects, programs, and other assistance to historically underserved communities. This bill also reauthorizes the Corps' Tribal Partnership Program and makes a series of targeted improvements to increase opportunities for tribal communities to partner with the Corps on essential projects in a more cost-effective way for the tribe. And finally, WRDA 2022 establishes a new workforce development and STEM outreach program at the Corps with a priority to recruit new engineers from underserved and disadvantaged communities. Before I yield the floor to Senator Capito, I just want to take a moment to thank some of the staff members on both sides of the aisle for their hard work and determination in drafting this legislation. Senator Capito and I, along with some of our other colleagues, have the privilege of having the legislation bear our names. But she knows and I know we're only as good as the people we have around us. And she has just a terrific group of men and women on her staff, on our committee, and I believe we have the same on our side. But on Senator Capito's staff, I'd especially like to recognize Adam Tomlinson, a fellow at West Virginia, as am I, along with Max Hyman, Haddon Miller. In fact, I think all three of these people are native West Virginians, if I'm not mistaken. But Kim Townsend, Libby Calloway, Catherine Scarlett, Murphy Barrett for their steadfast dedication and partnerships. On my staff, I would especially like to recognize Mary Frances Repko, Staff Director, Tyler Hoffman Reardon, Maylee Boyce, Jordan Baugh, Janine Barr, and especially John Kane, who works like a demon, like a tiger, in leading our water team on our committee. I also want to recognize Mark Mazzone and Deanna Edwards of the Senate Legislative Council and David Wethington. Amy Klein, Nicole Comiskey of the Army Corps of Engineers Congressional Affairs staff. The folks at the Legislative Council actually do a lot of the writing, the actual legislative writing, and they are invaluable. The Corps and the Senate Legislative Council are the unsung heroes of making this legislation happen, though. From feeling the need for numerous project updates and helping draft the legislation to providing technical assistance. And we are grateful. We are grateful. Both of us are extremely grateful for the efforts of all of you. Sometimes I know people watch television or they watch the news and they say, why don't they ever work together in Washington and in the Congress? And this legislation is like just about as clear evidence as you'll ever find that we do work together. We do work together. We put this bill together in a bipartisan way. We debated it in a bipartisan way, reported it out in a bipartisan way, debated on the floor, worked with the House and with the administration, in a way that I think most any American could be proud of. The way this is the way the democratic process is supposed to work. And right here, especially with our committee and this legislation, we have done that. But in this holiday season, in Season of Giving, the Water Resources Development Act of 2022 reminds me of a saying by Winston Churchill. Churchill used to say, "Never give in, except to convictions of honor and good sense." And on this bill, Mr. President, I can proudly say that we have acted on both convictions. We have delivered for our colleagues, we've delivered for our country, and we've done so by enacting important common sense policies. And with that, I'm delighted to yield the floor to Senator Capito.
Mr. President.
Senator from West Virginia.
Thank you, Mr. President, and I thank my chairman of the Environment and Public Works Committee for his great statement, but also his great work through the year. He did mention several of the bipartisan wins that we have. Many of them have been unanimous through the committee, because we all know you can't get everything we know you can't get everything you want. You got to give a little to get a little. And so I salute him and our staffs for being able to work that out. But today, I want to also briefly talk for a few minutes about the Bipartisan Water Resources Development Act of 2022. The chairman described it. It's kind of nice to get up here and talk about something that's already passed. So we don't really have to be persuasive. We're just reminding members of how important this is in their districts and across their states. I'm grateful to my colleagues for the support of this legislation, and I'm pleased that it's now on the way to the President's desk for his signature. Through WRDA, Congress authorizes water resources projects and sets national policies for the Civil Works program of the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers. I live about a half a mile from a river that has a lot of commerce on it. It's very important that the Corps is able to do their work. The work of the Corps facilitates commerce throughout the country and internationally. Projects along our inland waterways and at our ports enable the movement of cargo while also bolstering our supply chain. We know that natural disasters such as floods and hurricanes can strike at any time and have devastating consequences on our communities. But the Corps' work to protect the lives and livelihoods of millions of Americans is supported by the congressional authorization of flood and coastal storm risk management policies that are contained within this bill. Since 2014, as the chairman said, we have enacted WRDA every 2 years, and I'm happy to say we're carrying on that tradition. I want to thank, again, Chairman Carper for his leadership and dedication, and I'd also like to thank our colleagues in the House, Chairman of the T&I Committee, which I served for 12 years, Chairman Peter DeFazio, and Ranking Member Sam Graves. They did great work here, and we were able to work out our differences. We would not be here today without their tireless efforts to reach an agreement that addresses the priorities of members from both sides of the aisle and both sides of the Capitol. I would also like to thank two senators from our committee, Senators Cardin and Kramer. We are the 4 C's, we call ourselves, Cardin, Kramer, Carper, and Capito. If you can say that quickly, you're in better shape than we're going to be later on tonight, probably, as we vote late, I hope. But I'd like to thank them for their support and partnership during this process. I want to express my gratitude, as the chairman did, to the staff of our committee, the staff of T&I, the staff of the Army Corps of Engineers for their technical assistance, and to the House and Senate Legislative Council for their diligence, professionalism, and commitment to many long hours throughout this process. I'm pleased that our final agreement with the House maintained the vast majority of the provisions that were in our Senate bill. True to the Corps' tradition, this bill moves forward projects that both benefit both local communities and the entire country. Specifically, the WRDA bill authorizes 25 new projects and 6 modifications to existing projects around the country, including projects for navigation, flood and coastal storm risk management, and ecosystem restoration. And it authorizes more than 100 feasibility studies that will develop solutions to water resource challenges in our years ahead. So smart, I think, to look to the future. While this bill is very much oriented towards advancing critical projects and studies in our states, it also contains several policy changes that will help the Corps better succeed in its civil works missions. The bill bolsters the agency's technical assistance authorities, specifically the floodplain management services and planning assistance to states' programs. Every state's different, and we know that some of these challenges are vast. It authorizes the Corps to conduct outreach and the chairman mentioned this, to ensure that our communities are knowledgeable in the ways in which the agency can help them with their water resources needs. The bill makes important improvements to the Tribal Partnership Program and other authorities to assist our Indian tribes. It also expands existing programs and includes new authorities to assist communities that are economically disadvantaged, including those located in rural areas. It requires reporting on timelines for the environmental review process for projects. We know that is essential. The bill directs the GAO to conduct a review of projects that are over budget and delayed, as well as a review of the Corps' mitigation practices for these projects. It provides flexibility, every state's different, to our non-federal sponsors with respect to financial accounting and fulfilling cost share obligations for projects. It also authorizes for the first time a dedicated research and development account for the Corps to spur innovation and provides contracting flexibility in undertaking these activities. The bill directs the Corps to support science, technology, engineering, and math, or our STEM fields, education, and recruit individuals for careers at the agencies. The input of non-federal interests is critical to successfully solving water infrastructure challenges now and in the future. So the bill establishes a new advisory committee for non-federal interests to voice their opinions on how the Corps can better meet their needs and improve project delivery. We also preserve the integral role of non-federal sponsors in the project delivery process by avoiding mandates from Washington, D.C., and ensuring that the Corps continues to evaluate a full array of solutions during the feasibility study phase. In addition to my role as ranking member of the EPW, I represent the great state of West Virginia, where my chairman was born. And I work to address the needs of my home state in this bill. I'll just give a few highlights that will benefit the lives of West Virginians. First, the legislation advances a critical flood control project in the city of Milton. Authorized in the 1990s, this project is a long time coming, and I am proud to have helped move it forward in these recent years. The bill also works to support flood control studies for the Kanawha River Basin and also in the city of Huntington. It continues to provide environmental infrastructure assistance for drinking and wastewater in our communities throughout the state. And finally, the bill will provide additional critical support to riverbank stabilization, such as those in the Kanawha River, in the capital city. In closing, there are a lot in this bill for both sides of the aisles and for communities across the country. It's the culmination of true bipartisan, bicameral effort and represents our shared goal of addressing our nation's water resources needs. I'm incredibly proud of our EPW committee as we continue to be one of the most active, cooperative, and fruitful committees of this Congress. And I would say, as a side note, when people ask me, how do we get things done? How do we find the answer to something like permitting reforms? You use the committees. You use the committees, like you use our committee or another committee to find the solutions and get the ideas from both sides and hammer out the differences. That's how you get things across the finish line. Again, the chairman went through the staff, but I'm going to take the liberty of going through the staff too, because I want to thank them as well. They worked many long nights on this. From Chairman Carper's staff, Mary Frances Repko, John Kane, Jordan Baugh, Maylee Boyce, Tyler Hoffman-Raridan, Mike Goodell, and Janine Barr. From my staff, I'd like to thank Adam Tomlinson, Murphy Barrett, Max Hyman, Kim Townsend, Catherine Scarlett, and Hayden Miller. I would also like to thank the Senate Ledge Council of Deanna Edwards and Mark Mazzone, and the U.S. Corps of Engineers, their engineering staff of Amy Klein, Dave Wethington, and countless other attorneys and technical staffs. We could not have done this without them, most certainly, and we want them to know how much we appreciate their efforts on behalf of not just the committee, but on the behalf of the American people. So thank you all of us here in this chamber, for getting WARDA 2022 across the line. And with that, I appreciate my colleagues for supporting this important legislation, and I'm looking forward to seeing the President sign it. And with that, I yield back, Mr. President.
Mr. President, how much time do we have remaining?
There's no time agreement at the moment. Do you seek recognition?
May I ask unanimous consent for another 30 seconds?
Without objection.
Yeah. I'm reminded of Senator Capito, we're both West Virginia kids, But I'm reminded of something that comes out of another continent. It's Africa. And one of the African proverbs they have over there is, if you want to go fast, go alone. If you want to go far, go together. And we've gone together. We've gone together, not just the two of us, not just our committee, but the entire United States Senate had the opportunity to provide input here. And we've come up with a great product, and we're grateful to everyone who's been a part of it, and look forward to the President signing this and doing good things for all of our states. With that, I yield the floor, and thank you very much.